Coming to you, pre-recorded from Casa de Regis in Culver City, California, it's the Reggie N Regis Podcast!
Hello, friends. Welcome to a tradition unlike any other. Welcome to episode 5 of the Reggie N Regis Podcast. I am your host, Reggie Bolden. To my left is my co-host, Regis.
Yes, Regis, mononymic, one name, like Madonna or Cher, but younger and way less talented.
Today, we will be discussing what would have been the final round of the
Okay, can we cut it with the Jim Nantz impression already?
Listen, I've been watching golf all week. I've been watching classic golf. I'm talking Jack Nicklaus, Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods. I mean, it's just like Jim Nantz's voice is just embedded in my head right now.
And we want to give all credit to ESPN and CBS Sports for putting on these classic rounds in the Masters all week because God knows we all needed our golf fix. But we haven't had any live sports lately. And how long has it been now?
It's been about a month. But first and foremost, before we start this episode 5 of this podcast, I obviously, Regis and I want to wish everybody a happy Easter. Hope you've found some way to enjoy this. Hope everybody's out there still staying very safe and getting through this tough time.
Yeah, we obviously we hope everybody's holding up well out there. Obviously, we know some people who have been out of work for several weeks now. Our work schedules have been reduced greatly. So if anybody does want to come and sponsor this podcast and help us out, we're at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. No, but seriously, we want to wish everybody the best throughout all this because I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen with any of this until it's all said and done. Yes.
In the meantime, I mean, we, just like everybody else, are trying to find ways to keep ourselves entertained, to keep ourselves sane, and obviously, most importantly, keeping ourselves safe. And with that being said, we will be touching on a few interesting topics. We have obviously the Masters, which would have, again, been going on this weekend. We have the XFL, and we have a particular interview that happened, a very interesting interview that happened over the week that we also will be touching on. But first and foremost, the Masters. As I alluded to earlier, I have basically since Wednesday have been watching Masters classics. I watched Nicklaus's his 18th major win in 1986. How excited! That was really freaking exciting. I hadn't seen that one in forever. A couple of Tiger Woods, 05, and obviously today, 2019 CBS show. Yesterday, I watched Phil Mickelson win his first green jacket. Very. It's always nice to see retro kind of like events from like just the past.
Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned the Nicklaus 86 final round. In terms of, gripping drama, the only other two Masters that in my lifetime that I can think of were that good were the 19 Tiger Woods, like you said, last year, and his first win in 97.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention 97. I mentioned 05 in 2019, but 97 was a 21-year-old Tiger Woods. Wow.
Like, I remember where I was when that actually was happening. Like, I was actually, ironically, I was playing a golf game on my parents' Gateway 2000 computer back in April of 97. You want to talk about retro, right? And my dad's like, son, get in here. History's happening. Turns out he was right.
Yeah. I remember just the buildup. Obviously, Tiger had turned pro the year before, and all this hype and all this energy, and his first major. His first major as a professional. I know he played in amateurs in the Masters, but just completely dominated the course. And you look at the build that Tiger had in '97. Obviously, 21, man. I looked at the one from 2019. I was just like, wow, he looked like a boy out there.
Oh yeah, he looked like a high school kid, playing golf at like a local course. And then you look at his run in 2000 and 2001, you could tell like he's changing the way golf was done because he was the first guy to really like take the fitness and weight training regimen program, and now they all look like that.
Yeah, you look at these physical specimens like Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, and even Rory McIlroy. These guys are just like chiseled, and it's just I don't know. I'm a very nostalgic kind of guy, obviously, and I just to have seen a few of those past events was just it helped me kind of get through the week.
Well, one thing we do have to give credit to Augusta National for. I know a lot of people like to rag on them for, let's just say, being historically behind the times more so than other sports leagues, and them being kind of stodgy with their terminology and their 1-year contracts.
They still don't allow women on in Augusta, right?
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Okay.
But they did announce earlier this week that their tentative plan, obviously subject to change, is to hold the Masters during the week of November 9th through the 15th, obviously still at Augusta National, but that's going to create an interesting conundrum in a couple of ways. First of all, that's going to be the week after daylight savings time hits. So it's going to be dark in Augusta, Georgia at about maybe 5 p.m. Eastern time. So they obviously can't schedule the final round like they would have. Now, they could always do like a Wednesday through Saturday sort of thing, but I don't think Augusta National is going to want to do that.
No, they're probably going to do what they did last year as far as just push it up. I mean, when they normally start like noon, 11, like noon, like Eastern time. So they'll probably push it up like maybe 9 a.m., 8 a.m., which will be perfect because, if the NFL does happen, which we are all praying that it does, CBS will have a slot to put the 4 o'clock games on there. So
yeah, I mean, we're basically just kind of spitballing best case scenario here.
Right. Obviously.
Yeah, because CBS obviously a big NFL rights holder, and it's obviously their most popular television property. But the Masters, even though it's only for one weekend, it draws big ratings for the weekend that it is normally scheduled. I'll tell you right now, we would be watching the Masters final round right now as we were recording this.
Of course, and the Masters are a part of American sports, tradition. I mean, you basically, you could talk the World Series, obviously the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, but I mean, the Masters is the tournament of tournaments in golf.
Exactly. It's the Masters Super Bowl without question.
Exactly.
But it's going to be interesting if, as you said, with the NFL and college football, if the Masters is going to be able to draw the kind of attention that it normally does in the middle of November as compared to April. Like visually, obviously, it's not going to be, everything just recently in bloom like it always is out there. But as you mentioned, CBS, right, it's going to create not just a scheduling conflict for how you divvy up the airtime and, if there is a conflict, what goes where, because, again, it rains a lot in Georgia in November at that time of year, so obviously the finish could be pushed back, but an interesting question here is, what do you do if you're Jim Nantz?
If I was Jim Nantz, hello, friends.
That's why we started the podcast the way we did, by the way.
I'll be covering the Masters.
Yeah, because he has a couple of...
You can't have the Masters without Jim Nantz.
Well, it's kind of interesting, the dilemma he would have here, because this would be roughly about week 10 of the NFL season. Obviously, he's on the number one broadcast crew with Tony Romo and Tracy Wolfson. The NFL hasn't released its schedule yet, so we don't know how good of a game that's going to be in... week 10 of the NFL. NFL schedule release is slated for May 9th, by the way, later than usual for obvious reasons. But Jim Nantz has been so ubiquitous with the Masters really for about the last 20 years now.
20 plus.
Yeah, at least. And what do you do if you're him? Now, I think, like you, I think he's going to choose the Masters over the NFL.
Jim Nantz can miss 1 week of the NFL to cover the most sacred of golf tournaments. I mean, I think he'd prefer it that way. Obviously, I don't want to speak for him, but I think if given the choice, which CBS will give him the choice, he'll do that 4 days in Augusta, and then come back to his normal kind of broadcast booth with the following Sunday.
Exactly, and CBS can just promote Iron Eagle to work with Romo and Wolfson for 1 week,
which would not be a horrible thing at all.
They just signed Charles Davis away from Fox earlier this week as another analyst. So
Charles Davis is I absolutely love Charles Davis.
You talk about a broadcaster's really come up the last 5 or 6 years.
Exactly.
He's gonna be a number one analyst someday.
And just finishing touches on the Masters. I was watching an interview, or I actually read an interview with Tiger Woods, and he actually was kind of very, somewhat disappointed that he wasn't going to be able to defend his, his crown. But he, he basically said he's feeling really good right now. So I wonder how that's gonna take place, basically in November, because apparently, according to the PGA, they're going to do all four of their majors. So I wonder what Tiger in his advanced stage is going to do, how he's going to be able to play.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. Tiger Woods, he was 21 when he won his first one in 97, so that'd make him about 44 now.
Right.
Obviously, he had that great tournament last year, but if they do condense everything like they're talking about doing, having the PGA go back to August, for example, and then having the U.S. Open in September, which would give Fox an NFL conflict, but I think that'd be easier to deal with in week 3. How exactly is he going to hold up by that point? Which brings us to another athlete at somewhat of an advanced stage in his career.
Yeah, one Tom Brady, who had a very, how would you describe it? It was a very kind of detailed, very engaging, very open conversation with Howard Stern.
Yeah, it was the most candid interview we've seen Tom Brady do in the 20 years he's been in the NFL.
Ever.
And it's kind of interesting because this is the first real public interview he's had since signing with the Buccaneers. And not only was it with somebody whose career arc could not be more dissimilar from Tom's, right? Tom kept everything close to the vest, kept everything about football and everything like that.
It's very boring.
Yeah, it was very boring. And Howard Stern, boring, it was everything he was trying not to be.
Right.
If you've ever seen the movie Private Parts, and that came out in 97, God knows everything he's done since then. It's just kind of interesting that it would be him that he would choose to do that. And Howard Stern is probably the one interviewer he's talked to who's more famous than Tom Brady is.
Right. And not only that, but it went 2 hours. 2 hours, and maybe a little bit over 2 hours. But I was, first of all, when I first heard about the interview, I was kind of like, okay, I mean, Howard Stern gets a lot of, famous guests. But when I saw the length of this interview, I was like, with that guy, Tom Brady, is this the same Tom Brady, who's very covert, the Patriot way, just doesn't say a lot. And when he does say something, it's just very boring.
Yeah, and if you were to ever splice together every national interview he'd done over the course of his career, does that even total 2 hours?
I'd put money on the under on that one.
Yeah, totally. Outside of his, weekly WEEI show that he had in Boston, when has he ever spoken to the media at length or given us any content that isn't a canned answer that any other athlete could do?
But with that interview, there's a couple of things I took away from that. The fact that Stern kind of gave him an opening to kind of maybe take a shot or two at Belichick, the Patriots, the Patriot way, I should say, and how Tom kind of rose above that and kept it classy. And so basically said, look, I wouldn't be where I am without Coach Belichick, and Coach Belichick would not be where he is without me, which I thought was very fair. Another thing I took away from that interview was the fact that apparently Tom is renting out one Derek Jeter's home.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, if you think about it, Derek Jeter has, I don't know the exact financials of this. This might have been, pre-virus and franchise valuation, everything like that. I think he's probably made more money owning the Marlins than he did throughout most of his career playing for the Yankees. So,
well, that remains to be seen. I would assume, man, when you are majority owner of even a crappy franchise like the Florida Marlins, don't get me started on them.
Actually, they've been the Miami Marlins since 2012.
I still know them as the Florida Marlins.
That's how irrelevant they are.
Exactly. Thank you. But it's kind of this weird correlation because they're two, I guess, definitive champions of the last 20 plus years. Excluding Michael Jordan. But I mean, these are the two guys, if you take their respective sports, who you identify as winners. Right. So the fact that, Brady is renting Jeter's home, first of all, I'm wondering, what was the down payment on that? I mean, was it first and last security? Do you think they kind of work something out where, so they're boys, they're friends, I don't know.
Okay,
you think Jeter gave him a discount?
You know how Brady never let anything out about what was going on in the Patriots locker room during his 20 years in New England? I think he'd be more willing to share the behind the scenes of what went on in the Patriots locker room than he would to let these lease documents out. And again, this is the accountant in me thinking right here. So
I'm pretty sure Jeter gave him a good deal. I mean,
Well, okay, so the house that he's renting is in this area of Florida called the Davis Islands, which is apparently this very posh gated community. Obviously, neither Reggie or I have ever been there, but apparently
one day.
Hopefully one day. Again, if you want to help kickstart that and sponsor us, we are at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. Anyway, so when Jeter moved there, he asked the zoning commission of that area if he could put up more walls to make the place a little bit more private. And apparently, according to Brady, it's not even private enough for him at that level.
Yeah, and I just kind of heard about that, and I kind of thought that was funny. Obviously, I mean, is Brady bringing that kind of patriot mentality as far as his living situation, as far as not being private enough? Because from what I've heard, it's a very private area.
Aside from the fact that literally people could pull up with boats to your backyard.
Yeah.
You think anybody's doing that in New England?
No. Well, I mean, I look, rich people problems. I mean, what?
Yeah, exactly. These are people.
I mean, I guess I would never understand. I don't know. But I did find that to be pretty interesting. I also found interesting how in high school, Mr. All-American, Mr. Kind of, a guy who I probably thought drank milk and took his vitamins, apparently drank alcohol and smoked.
And he said, and I quote, he gave very average effort in high school, which, yeah, you don't seem like he's the kind of guy to do so because he's so much of a preparation zealot like Belichick was.
He's the ultimate underachiever. That's all we've ever known about Tom Brady, from Michigan to New England. I mean, just everything about this guy's always been.
And now he's going to a Tampa Bay team where, let's face it, he could have gone to another destination that was probably better suited to win now than they were.
I mean,
at least in terms of recent success.
You're right, but I mean, you look at the weapons in Tampa. I'm like,
and that was another big reason he went there, and he went into that in the interview, which that surprised no one.
Not only that too, but if you look at the destination, obviously, when you get older, you don't want to play in that cold weather anymore. The fact that you play your division opponents are going to be two dome teams. The weather in Tampa, Florida, in November is beautiful. I mean, the worst case scenario is he has to go to Carolina for one week.
Yeah, and if that game's in December, right?
Exactly. So it made all the sense in the world for me. Like, especially I guess it's been 3 weeks since he signed with them, or like it was reported that he was going to sign with them, and it just made all the sense. And the more, again, I think about it, the more I love the idea. I can't wait to see what he looks like. I just hope they don't bring those creamsicle uniforms back.
No, they revealed them this week.
Oh, they did.
They did.
Okay,
it's basically almost an exact copy of what they had in the Warren Sapp years.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, that being said, if the NFL relaxes its one shell rule they've had since 2013, they could bring back the creamsicles for maybe like a one-off sort of deal.
Which would make sense. I mean, this is probably the most hideous uniform.
Are you kidding me? The creamsicles were awesome.
They were hideous.
Those were wonderful. The bright orange and the white pants with the Bucko Bruce. I mean, what other professional franchise has had a winking pirate with a sword in his mouth and an Elton John feather in his hat?
That's probably
that was glorious.
The least intimidating logo ever. But I mean,
no, because it has people thinking, "What the fuck is this?"
But then again, the Miami Dolphins logo is kind of. I mean, all right.
No, and that's another conversation for another day. But seriously, but you have a problem with Bucko Bruce?
I have look, I'm just glad they kept this somewhat, the same as it's been for the last, I guess, 20 years or 18 years.
Yeah. The only thing they kept that I didn't like was the, how they had that comically huge helmet decal?
Right.
They kept that. But then everything else they have now is pretty much almost exactly like they had in the Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks years.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm excited to see what Mr. Brady's going to do in Tampa.
But there were some other interesting tidbits on his interview as well.
Okay.
Like he mentioned marriage troubles with Gisele Bündchen.
Obviously, well, yeah. That was unexpected as well, and that's why I guess he skipped OTAs last year.
Yeah, something like that. Now, kudos to Howard Stern for having the balls to ask about something like that.
You knew Howard Stern was going to go there. I mean,
What,
if
with
Brady? If you
Brady?
know anything about Howard Stern, he's going to ask whatever the fuck he wants.
I mean, yeah, he can ask whatever the fuck he wants, but he also realizes Brady is probably one of the more famous people he's interviewed.
Well, Brady, you know what? Like from the answer that Brady gave, it seemed like I don't want to, well, obviously not a common thing, but, the fact that Giselle kind of laid an ultimatum on him. It's just like, hey, I want you around more. The kids are growing up, this, that, and the other, just kind of just like, and Tom was just like, but, Tom also said he pretty much knew this was going to be his last year with the Patriots. I mean, last year, I should say. So, he was just like, you know what, fuck it. Like, yeah, I think I will skip OTAs.
Yeah, so exactly. That was another thing he put in there is that he knew as far back, at least he knew in his head as far back as the summer it would probably be his last year, but he didn't know for sure until he actually told Mr. Kraft he was leaving. But it just goes to show you, like, the one percenters, they have the same problems we do. And of course, with this situation we're in right now, marriage troubles are probably something that are probably abound right now because, quite frankly, you spend too much time around one person, you're going to get sick of them.
You know what? I'll be honest. I'm glad Tom pulled that card. I mean, look, I'm obviously not a Patriots fan. Go New York Giants. But with that being said, Tom has always played the part. The consistent, constant Patriot guy, the team guy, the guy who sacrificed, paychecks and contracts. And I'm glad he's just like, you know what, I'm going to skip it.
Yeah, well, and I got to give Tom credit here because he was able to give us a lot of content and candidness that we would never have expected out of him and a lot of information that we're glad that we know now. But also he still was able to respect the people that helped get him to where he is.
Exactly.
And, obviously wishing the best for the Patriots organization going forward. And if anybody can balance that really well, it's Tom Brady.
I'm pretty sure when Tom finally decides to hang it up, he'll be welcome back in Foxborough. I don't think he'll have any troubles, just being kind of just loved again.
Yeah, 6 rings. It's definitely not going to be like a Cleveland Art Modell situation.
No. Or, it's but with that being said, also, speaking of football.
Yeah, I'll say going from a league whose financial future is probably solidified for the rest of our lifetimes to a league that wasn't so fortunate. It was announced earlier this week that the XFL was suspending operations at least through what was their scheduled to be 2021 regular season. The 2020 regular season would have ended this week, so they would have 2 weeks of playoffs. But they're not. They didn't just cancel the 2020 season. They're suspending operations through 2021, which has led a lot of people to speculate, even though they didn't formally announce it, that the league is probably going under for good.
Yeah, you know what? When I heard Vince McMahon, I guess it was 2-3 years ago, said he was going to bring back the XFL, and I was kind of like, oh God, like why? Like
I could think of a reason why he might want to do it.
No, but like when he did initially, like a few years ago, when he was just like, we're going to bring it back. I'm like, dude, like you didn't learn your lesson like from before. But watching these games, and how long did it go? Like 4 weeks?
5.
Those were some entertaining games.
They were, and Vince McMahon made a very, very smart hire in hiring Oliver Luck to be the president of the league. Of course, Oliver Luck, former athletic director at West Virginia, one of the former heads of the NCAA, obviously somebody, and he was an NFL player for a number of years with the Oilers, also from Cleveland, Ohio. But he was obviously somebody who knew the game just about as well as anybody. Oh, and did we forget, he's Andrew's dad.
Oh, yeah, I thought I was going to have to remind you of that. But some of the, I don't know, the strategy that they brought as far as the kickoffs and as far as the, what was some of the things that they brought?
They changed a lot from the game as we normally see it on NFL Sundays. Of course, they had the kickoff rule where if you're going to go onside, you had to declare you were going to do so. But on a regular kickoff, you kick off from the 35, and then the defensive players are lined up on the opposite 35. The return players are at their own 25, and they can't move until the guy fields it.
Right.
And they also had varying touchback rules to where if you try to kick it out of the end zone from a certain distance, they get the touchback at a certain point. I'd have to look up that a little bit more specifically, but also in terms of and also I forgot about the 1, 2, and 3 point conversions, but also in terms of the way the game was broadcast and the access to the players.
Yeah, I mean, it gave a lot of guys who had either been released or just weren't, like, obviously in the NFL anymore, like Cardell Jones and Landry Jones, and a lot of players a platform to like just perform. And again, it was a very entertaining brand of football.
Exactly. And again, we'll get to like how it shook out for the players in a second, but you had, reporters go up to, major playmakers right after they made major plays.
Right.
The censors had to be, on their toes and everything because you heard a lot of Freudian slips.
Right. I mean, look, compare this brand of football compared to the one that came out in 01. There was no skanks in the bathtubs, in the opposing or like whatever like part of the fields. There wasn't The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin prior to a game doing some kind of cliched not NFL, WWE or WWF, whatever it is right now. It's just like, it was just comical. It was just like, dude, like really, look, I'm a big wrestling guy, but I just could not take it seriously.
I remember watching the very first XFL game back in 2001 when that happened, and of course, A, it was in Vegas, and B, Vince McMahon comes out and he's like, "This is the XFL." As soon as I heard that, I'm like, "Yep, I know exactly what this is gonna be."
Exactly. And who's the MVP? Oh, here's a good trivia for you. Who's the MVP of the league?
Tommy Maddox, who would go on to win a playoff game in 2002 with the Pittsburgh Steelers against my beloved Cleveland Browns with a major comeback, and the Cleveland Browns have not made the playoffs. That's a good one. I thought I would have stumped you on that one. That's actually a really, really good one. With leading a comeback to beat the Browns, I mean, come on.
That was a good game, too. That was a really good game. I mean, that was the last time your team actually did anything worth a damn. But, I mean,
we went 10-6 in 2007.
Yeah,
and if Peyton Manning hadn't come out after one snap and intentionally blown that game against the Titans, we would have made the playoffs and gotten killed by the Chargers in round 1.
Hey, Ward Derek Anderson, wherever you are.
He just got released by Carolina. He was a backup with them forever behind Cam.
But you know what? I feel bad for the XFL. I mean, I feel bad for the. Yeah, look, I don't ever want to say I feel bad for Vince McMahon. I mean, look, he's a freaking billionaire. He's still going to have his career and his his life,
and he's still found a way to keep WWE going throughout all this. Which
exactly,
kudos to him for at least creating content.
But the particular, I feel bad for the workers. Again, this was a really, really enjoyable brand of football. And it showed life. This is something that could have carried on.
Exactly. They could have bought themselves a season 2. Obviously, we don't know what the financials are going to be yet for them yet, and we may never find out. We didn't find out until they did the 30 for 30 that the original version of the XFL lost $70 million in 2001. And that's when Ebersol had to pull the plug when he was with NBC. But another thing you had to think about, and this is why they canceled through 2021, they were beholden to a lot of things that were outside of their control, right? They were renting out, say, University of Houston Stadium. They had MLS stadiums they were renting out. Tampa Bay and Seattle's stadiums were owned by their NFL franchises. Of course, God forbid, if the NFL does get delayed anytime this year, the XFL's season literally started the week after the Super Bowl, so then that scheduling would have had to have been altered. Mm-hmm. Of course, all the logistics of everything involved, they weren't as well financed as the NFL, as we obviously know. So the fact that they had so many unknowns, thank you to Joel Klatt for tweeting that out, by the way, about why that was. That's why they had to cancel through next season as well. And again, it looks like this is probably going to be it for the XFL 2.0, but at least I like the fact that they've allowed for the possibility of there being something that could come back in 2022, as unlikely as it looks.
Yeah, they definitely redeemed themselves from the initial clusterfuck. What do you think? Do you think it comes back?
Well, I'll put it this way. This is April of 2020 we're in right now.
Right.
In April of 2018, could you have predicted anything like what we're going through right now in the sports world in general?
God, no.
So that's why I'm going to hold off from making a prediction, because God knows what 2022 is going to look like even from today.
True.
So the XFL is canceled for at least the time being, hopefully not permanently, but at least for the time being. Another promotion that has canceled all of its events for the time being is the UFC.
Yeah, how about Rebel Dana White? Basically, just trying to, I admire his kind of his
gumption.
I was gonna say balls, but I like gumption is good. But the fact that even in this pandemic that we're all living in is basically like, hey, we're gonna get this going. We're gonna try to find a way. We're gonna put out our product until the powers that be was just like, no.
Dana White has a history of having to be very innovative and creative in ways to further promote the UFC product.
Of course, and he's done a great job.
Now, if you remember back to like around 2005 or so, the UFC was a dead product, right? It was basically months away from folding, and it looked like there wasn't going to be much of a future for MMA at all. So then he makes a deal with Spike TV, creates The Ultimate Fighter.
Yes, I remember that.
It ends up being one of the most popular shows on the network.
I remember that, yeah.
And then over the course of about a 3-year period, UFC goes from being bottom of the barrel, almost canceled, to being even bigger than boxing and WWE. It was... MMA was on fire from about 2007 to about 2010. Of course, that was in the era of Chuck Liddell and Kimbo Slice, Tito Ortiz, guys like that. So if there's anybody who knows how to innovate and make something out of nothing, it's Dana White.
God. Yeah, I mean, he's a genius at that. I mean, when obviously the individuals that you mentioned, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, Kimbo Slice, and then promoted Ronda Rousey, made her into. I mean,
exactly. They expanded the women's division into something people actually want to watch.
And she was like the biggest star for like a year or two in both divisions. I mean, you had like guys like John Jones and obviously Conor McGregor. I mean, it's just like it's incredible. It's a very innovative. I respect what he was trying to do, but even when I was reading how he wanted to still continue, I just thought like everything else is basically on hiatus. I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea.
Yeah, because so the actual plan that he had was he was going to conduct the events on a tribal reservation in Central California, which technically isn't subject to governmental orders that general public areas are. And he had everything ready to go. He had the essential staff there. They weren't going to have fans. But there was some things done in Sacramento by a certain politician who shall remain nameless, who called some friends of his in Burbank, those friends being Disney executives.
The power of the mouse.
Yes. I've heard of a very derogatory term for the power of the mouse, but I'm not going to say it because it would offend so many people. But anyway, the highest levels at ESPN and at Disney, so basically Jimmy Pitero, who runs ESPN, and that new Bob guy, I know Bob Iger stepped down a couple months ago, but they have the new Bob, who's the head of there now. They basically called Dana White and said, look, if you want us to keep paying you rights fees for the events and have them on ESPN Plus pay-per-view and have the sweet deal that you have, you're going to cancel for the time being.
Yeah, and like even as big of a rebel as Dana White is, what do you do? I mean, you have to play ball. I mean, it's just what it is. And I mean, honestly, I think it was the right move.
It was one of those things where when I read what he was trying to do, it was like, how is he going to pull this off? I was trying to think of the logistics of it all. And it would have been very difficult even if he could have.
Yeah, exactly. I commend him for wanting to put out the product, but I also kind of realize it's just not the time.
Well, not just that, but if you look at, again, we're going to bring Vince McMahon back up here. Look at WWE. They're still going to be broadcasting their weekly shows, Raw and SmackDown and NXT from their training center in Florida, and they have another training center at this place called Full Sail University, also in Florida. But those are WWE owned, or at least managed or everything like that.
Exactly.
And they have their own network. They have their own distribution access.
Reed, did you know wrestling is fake?
Really?
No, I just sort of, I know you're a big, I know you're like a ultimate, like just wrestling fan. I didn't realize if you kind of know.
I had no idea. So when they hit somebody with a chair, it doesn't really happen?
No, it doesn't. Like, I mean, it's like it's planned. It's kind of like, just
Obviously, it's fake.
okay.
If you watch some of the old stuff, but
no. By the way, did you see Gronk won the 24/7 title last week?
if you didn't need any more any more evidence that wrestling is fake, that is it right there.
I remember, like, obviously last week was WrestleMania, obviously the Super Bowl of the WWE, and I did obviously watch it, but I did see a clip of Gronk, who I guess he was like an analyst or he was just somebody there, and they had like this kind of free fall, just kind of like just that, and Gronk just steps on he jumps off the balcony. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, just like, well, if there was ever a perfect career for an real athlete.
No, Gronk was a real athlete, but
like, look, and no disrespect to wrestlers, I know they're athletes, but but if there was ever another career for
Gronk to go,
exactly,
well,
that would have been it.
Well, you also know Rob Stone from Fox Sports actually held the 24/7 title for like 9 seconds last year. That's how much of a joke it is.
Okay,
but before we get back to UFC, WWE, just make Gronk versus Pat McAfee happen, please. Please.
That would actually be pretty awesome.
No, McAfee actually owns a wrestling ring. He's been training.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Please make that happen. But I think I'm speaking for everybody who's ever listened to this podcast for that. But going back to UFC, right? So their events are, kind of on hiatus for the foreseeable future. And again, it was the right business decision by Dana White because, right, he has the massive deal with Disney Plus. I think he's in year 2 of, I think it's a 5 or 6 year deal.
Right.
He wants to leave the UFC in the best position it can be. But I think that kind of goes to the nature of where we're at in the sports world right now, in that there are a lot of things there that are uncertain. A lot of major professional leagues right now have contingency plans that they're working on right now, but we don't know if they're actually going to work or not.
Right. There's nothing dead set. And, as fans, as obviously we are, you hear a lot of chatter and you hear a lot of things, and Major League Baseball wanting to put their games in Arizona and where else?
In Florida.
Florida and it's just like, first of all, they're going to have to obviously cut down the games, maybe on 161 to 100 games, something along that sort. You talk about the NBA, going to Vegas to do their. I mean, it's just kind of a lot of things that have not been, obviously just signed, sealed, and delivered. It's just kind of like a lot of talk right now. Yeah,
so the talk right now in MLB is that they are planning on, instead of having an AL and an NL like they've had since the early 1900s, they're thinking of having 2 leagues, one in Arizona and one in Florida, because 15 teams conduct their spring training in each location. So obviously it'd be easier to, keep everybody monitored, because all the Arizona places are basically in the Phoenix area. I think there's a couple in Tucson, and then Florida is all throughout, basically southern Florida. So everything's a hop, skip, and a jump on 75 or 4 or 95 or whatever, whatnot. Mm-hmm. So what they would do is that they would have the designated hitter in both leagues. They would be playing a possible double header every day. You wouldn't need the travel day in between games that you typically have on Mondays and Thursdays with series that you'd have, if you're playing baseball nationwide. So you could condense the schedule a little bit further that way. But I was thinking something else. If they actually do try to do something like this, why not experiment with rule changes? Like, one idea I've heard is, like, you have a lot of the umpires, for example, that are kind of getting up there at age, and, if they do contract a virus, might be susceptible to symptoms. Why not have a robotic ball strike call?
Well,
why not experiment?
I don't think they have that kind of technology as of yet. I mean,
the networks do.
Yeah, baseball is a traditional. I mean, they're the last. I mean, when they brought an instant replay a few years ago, I mean, they want to keep
the last one to do it. Yeah,
they want to be as traditional as possible. I mean, in the changing times. With that being said, I mean, just to obviously get that on a jump, to get it started, it's going to be difficult and stuff, because, again, we are going day by day, week by week of everything that's happening in the world. I mean, it's nice to think that we're going to have sports again by June or July. Is it kind of realistic?
We don't know yet.
All the weeks, all the days and the weeks that go by, I'm starting to think, because remember, baseball was supposed to be back initially when they
Yeah, it's supposed to be back like next week.
Exactly, and everything is just kind of like you just have to kind of play it by ear. And look, but am I hoping it will be back? Of course, but do I think
Well, kudos to these leagues for at least trying to come up with solutions.
No. Oh, yeah, Regis, by all means, yes. I mean, obviously, look, it's their livelihood. It's their business. Obviously, they are trying to kind of figure out a way to get all this happening. And obviously, as sports fans, just like all around this country, all around the world, we just want to find some, get back to normal.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these other leagues are coming up with plans as well, right? Like the NHL, for example, is thinking of conducting its playoffs in North Dakota.
Right.
And I think even in North Dakota, they wouldn't even have to worry about like letting fans in or social distancing or anything like that, because what are there, like 600,000 people there total?
Right. I mean,
apologies to our listeners in North Dakota.
Yeah. I mean, again, all these kind of ideas, and look, I'm glad these organizations are coming up with these kind of like plans and things of that sort. But I mean, until we get the word from obviously our top bosses, the government, and basically just like people feeling like they want to go out, because even if sports does come back, is there going to be a sense of, do I actually want to go out to a game or want to get back into, I mean, again, this whole thing is a big dilemma for me, because I don't know how to feel. Like I kind of want the option to go out to a ball game or, stay home and watch it. As far as the ones, like I think football will benefit the most as far as people staying home to watch. Baseball and maybe basketball as well, but baseball specifically, baseball is best when it's obviously when you are able.
Oh yeah, baseball's best experience live.
Exactly. If you try to like just put baseball games on television, yeah, it'll generate some kind of ratings, but it's not going to be anything. Having the option of going to a game, and that's what I mean. I don't know. Look. I don't know if they make the most revenue by that. They probably make the revenues just like the NBA, NFL, as far as commercials and advertising and all that stuff. But baseball is one of those games where you enjoy it more when you're there. Exactly.
There are elements to the game that make baseball being consumed live and in person different than being baseball consumed on TV.
Exactly. The NFL, again, is going to be the only one that can like reap the benefits of people staying home, because, I mean, the majority of the people or their massive audiences are like I should say the consumers are the ones who watch it at home.
Well, you also have to,
or in the bars.
Well, you also have to think of something else. NFL is only 16 games a year, so the ticket revenue and the at stadium concessions and parking revenue and stuff like that isn't going to be as great as you would have for MLB, where it's only one home game a year.
Exactly. So I mean, we'll just have to see how these things play out. I mean, we don't know anything, obviously. And
all right, so let's throw the one last contingency plan we haven't really discussed yet out there.
Okay.
The NBA is considering having its playoffs done in and around the Las Vegas area. Again, without fans, only essential personnel, and minimal number of people in attendance. It'd be kind of interesting to see what could happen with this.
Right. Obviously, their format would have to change as far as the structure of the playoffs.
Obviously, at least the first round, maybe the first two rounds would have to, go back to 5-game series.
Right.
Which you remember back when the first round were 5-gamers.
Oh yeah, I actually enjoyed that more actually than a 7-game series.
Obviously, the TV networks wanted 2 extra games,
which makes sense. But still, I mean, that would be interesting to see. I mean, I guess they would start it by June if they can.
If they can, and they probably have to have like a couple days of guys get back in game shape and stuff like that.
Right, and I mean, ended by the end of July, maybe early August. That way they can transition from that to because NFL.
Well, not only that to the NFL, but the NBA draft would then have to take place later.
Yeah, that's
because you had to determine the draft order by where people finished.
Yeah. I mean, again, we got to take it day by day, week by week.
If they do decide to have this playoffs in Vegas and the draft to extend to maybe sometime in early August, this could lead potentially to a change that they could have that isn't just day by day, could be permanent. If you remember back in 2011, you remember the lockout that happened back then?
Yeah, I remember.
So they had to start the season Christmas Day, condense 66 games into 5 months, and they eventually had the finals end in late June that year.
Yeah, everything kind of ran according to plan, basically.
But in recent years, largely because of the length of the season being lengthened because of people wanting to take more time off between games, right? The NBA has creeped more and more into the NFL season. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be smarter for the NBA to start Christmas Day, extend all the way through, say, the middle of June for their regular season, or maybe the end of May, and then conduct their playoffs in that dead period in June and July?
Well, that's pretty much the only alternative that they have. I mean, if they're going to get this off the ground in June and try to end it by the end of July.
No, I'm not saying just for this year. I'm saying for future years.
No, I think this year in particular is kind of
well. This year they would have to do that.
Obviously, we know what's going on in the world, so no, keep it the way it's always been. But as far as just like, I think if they want to kind of put a bow on this particular season, obviously, if they're gonna, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, if they start it in June and then they end by the beginning of August, then you could start the season again in Christmas, like like they did in 2011,
and then have another shortened year.
Yeah,
somewhat in that case, because they need some rest in between.
I know a lot of these NBA players are basically, they're all about shortening the season to like 60 games. You hear like guys like
the owners are never going to let that happen.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. So going forward, I didn't keep the same format. Keep the same how it's always been, but I think obviously what's going on in the world this particular year. I mean, yeah, if you're gonna if that's the big word, if we can get it started again,
well,
by June.
The one big takeaway in all of this is that all four of the major leagues have had to handle work stoppages and lockouts and things like that before, and I've always come up with creative solutions that left pretty much everybody satiated in the end.
Right.
And
they've never all had to do it together. But,
exactly. Yeah. This is obviously a first for everybody, but the fact that they've been able to exhibit that level of creativity and getting everything in the past leads me to believe that, if everything can get back going, obviously I think they can come up with good solutions to do so, which leads to kind of the big question that's on everyone's mind right now. What do we think is going to happen in the end of all this? Not just in the immediate term with these leagues trying to come up with contingency plans, but, for the semi-foreseeable future.
Gun to my head, and I hate to not sound very optimistic right now. I wouldn't be surprised if none of the professional sports organizations kind of have a season for the rest of the year. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying I hope that it happens, but I wouldn't be surprised because, I mean, this is obviously something that's very unprecedented, and we don't. I don't think even our government has any idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and preface all this by saying neither of us are epidemiologists or medical experts or have ever worked for a professional sports league. So everything we're predicting out here is basically a spitball opinion on our
Of course, yeah. That's why we're two guys with a podcast.
Yeah, like NBA and NHL, that one could go either way.
Right.
And it would not surprise me at all if they just had to end the seasons as they are.
Right.
Especially with the way NCAA basketball went. MLB, even if they have to get half a season in under a modified format, obviously they're not going to go the whole 162.
Obviously, college football, if kids are not able to go back to school, back to classes, they're not going to have a football season.
But that being said, if by August, if colleges are back open again, we're having college football.
Of course, which would be very welcomed.
Yeah, there's no reason to have 35,000 kids at a campus all within literal spitting distance of each other and not be able to have 100,000 fans in a stadium within literal spitting distance of each other.
Right.
But yeah, interesting to see what's going to happen though would be the NFL.
Again, my personal opinion, I don't foresee, especially the way things have been unraveling the past couple of weeks. We still really don't have a hold on this virus. So what's to say a month from now, 2 months from now, anything's going to really change? And you get to a certain point in time where, and maybe not so much for the NFL, college football, but you look at the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. How much further do you get along the lines till you say, you know what,
There's nothing we can do.
It's right. It's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. It's just like we can't do it anymore. There's nothing else we can do.
Well, and in those leagues, they might be between a rock and a hard place here in the next few months or so.
Right.
But let me ask this. Do you think, let's say we get to the middle of summer and, things aren't still open back up. How willing do you think Roger Goodell would be to acquiesce to, the sort of pressures that Dana White just had to acquiesce to not too long ago? You think Roger Goodell would be a little bit more, would offer a little bit more pushback because he comes from a more powerful position?
I guess it depends on what the NFL owners. They're, it's tough to predict what's going to happen 4 or 5 months from now. I think if we're in kind of the same state that we are right now, I would imagine just for the sake of just like business wise, it's just like I just don't think it's a good idea. And Roger Goodell is going to follow whatever the NFL owners want him to do. So again, that's the question. We have to play day by day, week by week.
Exactly. And well, here's my opinion on this. The NFL obviously, makes the most in television ad revenue of anybody.
Oh, by far.
And even if that, ad revenue is going to be, not what it was because companies aren't willing to spend as much, the NFL will take what they can get. Right. These owners are businessmen. And, again, I'm speaking from my optimism, my Cleveland, Ohio nurtured optimism here, that, hopefully the NFL will be able to go off without a hitch because I think we're getting to that point in society, and we definitely will be by the time the NFL season hits. I think we're getting to the point where we're going to need this stuff to be opening back up soon, man. People are going stir crazy.
Oh, I know I am. I again, we were discussing it before we started recording, and basically it's been a month and a day, and it literally feels like it's been a year. I can only imagine. And we live in a big city. LA is just like imagine somebody in like, Jerkwater, like USA. It's just like who just lives and dies by.
Hey, we might have listeners in Jerkwater, USA.
You know what I mean.
Apologies to our listeners in Jerkwater, USA.
It's just like, but people who like, let's just say like Omaha, Nebraska. Like they look forward to Cornhusker football in the fall. They've
already lost the College World Series.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. That too. And it's just one of those things where, as a sports fan, look, as nostalgic as I am, as much as I love watching old kind of, past events as far as just anything. I've watched a little bit of everything, NBA, NFL, golf, hell, I even watch I have the WWE 24-hour WWE channel. I don't have it, but like I could stream it. And I've watched like old like wrestling matches. It's all fun, but it's after a while you're like, Christ, like
there's only so much content to consume.
I like to do that like sparingly. I don't want to do it every freaking day.
Yeah, like just to give a little anecdote from what I've experienced. I've been doing a lot of that as well, watching old classic sports. I even found an old high school football game that we mentioned, Mike Dawson, the Miami Ohio State podcast we did. I found one of his old games from when he was at Canton McKinley, and that team won a USA Today national title back in '97.
How crappy was that footage? How grainy was it?
It was from a TV station in Canton, Ohio. I don't need to say anything more. But anyway, I've been watching a lot of that stuff. And yesterday, I just I went out for a run in my neighborhood, and I went through one of the few parks that's still open around here. Has a couple baseball fields, a dog park, and there were a lot of people there. There was a lot of cars parked at this kind of scenic overlook that overlooks the LA basin. There were kids and their dads playing catch. There were people playing frisbee. There were people out walking their dogs. I even found a couple of people, a couple of girls with these Easter Bunny ears and these hooker heels making what looked to be some kind of smut film.
I thought that stuff only happened in like Chatsworth or like Van Nuys or like Reseda.
I know, that's what I would have thought too.
Culver City?
Yeah, it was these two girls in these bunny costumes, and this creepy looking dude, like the kind of dude you see at the beginning of one of those films, and this even creepier looking dude with the camera. And of course, they're within maybe about 50 yards of where kids are playing catch with their dads. LA's a weird place, people.
So how long did you stay and watch?
Not 0 seconds. No, but anyway, it's like the point is, I went out for my run yesterday, and I saw a lot of people out, like a lot of people riding their bikes and stuff. People are kind of ready to, to return to some sense of normalcy, if you will.
Did you have your mask on?
Dude, I don't even have a mask right now.
Way to social distance, Tim. Reg.
Hey, I made my run through there. I made sure that I stayed 6 feet away from everybody. If I saw somebody coming the other way on the sidewalk, I'd go out into the road. I'm trying to be responsible about this here, people.
Regis is not helping. He's causing.
Right. Yeah. A 34-year-old healthy guy who's completely asymptomatic.
I'm just.
Hey, you know what? I'm trying to address my mental health here, and I think that's going to be a big concern in all of this.
But you know what? That's good that people were out and about and just kind of going about their casual Saturdays, having fun and whatnot. But look, I try to get out as much as I can as well. The difference with me is everybody I see out in the streets have masks and wants to stay not even 6, but 100 feet away from you.
No, believe me, I see that in the grocery store. Yeah, so obviously we're wishing, that, all of you are holding up well as well, because I would imagine probably most of you are going as crazy as we are.
Yeah, I'm starting to hit my breaking point.
Yeah, like normally on Saturdays I do board game night with my friends. We didn't do that last night, and I'm already feeling the mental deleterious effects of not having that.
It's getting hard. But look, obviously, as Regis was alluding to, it's just I hope everybody out there is just staying safe. Obviously, keeping their heads up. And, just basically all we can do is look forward to better days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why we, took the route we did on the podcast today, is that we looked at these, potential scenarios of what could happen and the effects of what we've seen so far. And honestly, I think we're all just hoping for the best, obviously in life, but in terms of what we cover on the show, in sports as well, so that hopefully we'll have some content to talk about in the not too distant future. Now, that being said, we do have our next 2 weeks already planned out.
Yes, for episode 6 and episode 7, we will be discussing and breaking down the upcoming NFL draft. And that in itself is going to be pretty interesting to watch. I wonder, Roger Goodell is going to have his robe on when he's making the announcements. And I'm just kind of wondering how these picks and all these trades and how they're going to happen.
Okay, so you know how in recent years Roger Goodell's kind of made a show of coming out to the fans before he announces the first pick,
booed like a mother,
and getting booed like a motherfucker, and him enjoying it because he loves it.
Of course he does.
What I could totally see him doing, because it was just announced today that he's actually going to be making the picks from the basement of his home in upstate New York. What if he comes out in a Ric Flair robe to 2001: A Space Odyssey? How God. Awesome would that be?
That would be, I you know what? That would be interesting, but I think even Roger would be that's a little too much.
He probably would be, but I just kind of thought that off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. Now, if he would have done that with a live audience, especially with it being in Vegas,
oh my God, that would have been amazing.
Would have been epic. But in his basement, in his home, I'm Roger, you're reaching a little bit.
Yeah, and to think, in January they announced that they were going to have a boat take the players from their galley area to the stage, and now we're at a teleconference from a basement in upstate New York.
Are you going to watch the NFL draft?
Let me think about that one for just half a second. Yes.
Yeah, I probably will too. It's first of all, what else is there to watch? Yeah, that's going to be interesting the way it plays out. But
we are going to go into depth on that next week as we kind of preview who the big names are, where they could possibly go, how we think it's going to logistically go down, because I think the logistics of it all, at least in terms of how the teams deal with each other, is going to be very different. And then 2 weeks from now, the weekend of the 25th, obviously we'll have the first 2 rounds done, and we can break down how we think these players selected are going to fit in their new environments.
We're going to try our best to channel in our Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Joe Klatt kind of, insights.
Should we do
as best?
Hold on. Should we do a video version for that week? Because then that way I can spike back my hair. I have a little bit of a widow's peak here. I can get.
I was thinking about being Mel Kiper. I could get the Eddie Munster wig, and even though it's kind of thinning.
I have longer hair.
I want to be Mel Kiper. I just want to be like, just shake my head. No.
I have the hair for it.
You would make a better Todd McShay. Okay, all right. Like, sorry, it's kind of random. Right?
Well, if you want to let us know who would be the better Mel Kiper or the better Todd McShay, you can let us know at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. That's REGGIE, the letter N, Regis, REGIS. Podcast at gmail.com, or if you have any other feedback for us as well. We are also on Twitter at Reggie N Regis Pod, and we are also available on some streaming platforms as well.
Oh yeah, we are on Anchor, we are on Spotify, Breakers, Google Podcasts. Please just whenever you have time, just kind of take a listen. See what you think. Tell us tell us we're good, tell us we suck. Again, any kind of feedback is welcome.
And if you have ideas for content, we welcome those as well.
That as well.
Until next week, we hope you guys all stay safe. We hope you guys all stay sane. And again, we are going to be doing the NFL draft here next week and the following weekend. So look forward to that.
Join us for episode 6 next week. We are out.